open up the mic for him. Thank you, brother Umar Johnson. Appreciate you coming out. Thank you, brother.
Did you shave, son? I get a big, yeah, he did shave.
Test one.
You ain't coming.
Black power.
Black power.
Black power.
Black power.
Black power.
Black power.
Brothers and sisters, it's an honor to be here. Thank you to Brother Eugene for the invitation. Thank you all for coming out. One thing I want to do as I make my remarks, and I'm going to call on Sister Anisha, because I just looked at you there, is to make sure I get this back. And what it is a sign-up sheet for a WhatsApp group I'm going to do for the brothers and sisters who came out today, so we can continue to stay in contact with each other. We understand that there's issues with the security system of WhatsApp, but I want to be honest about something. Sometimes we get so paranoid in our need for security that we don't get anything done. There's no system you're going to create living here that they don't have access to. And so one thing that my elders always taught me in the Garvey movement, and that is, you just have to go ahead and do the work and stop worrying about the consequences. Because if you keep on worrying about consequences, we'll never get anything done. What if Queen Mother Harriet Tubman worried more about the consequences of her work than the work itself? What if Fannie Lou Hamer and Ida Baker, what if all these great ancestors of ours worried more about the consequences than the actual work? So just make sure you put your name, phone number, and email address on that list as it comes around, if you want to be included. If not, that's perfectly fine. There's two sets of folk who I don't want to sign on that list, and that is agents. If you're here representing Homeland Security, FBI, CIA, okay, or any other anti-African movement, don't sign. And number two, any aliens. That means non-African folks. As a Garveyite, as a revolutionary Pan-African nationalist, my work, my message, my agenda is only for African people. And I say that unapologetically. I am not in love with everybody. I want to be clear about that. I am not trying to solve everybody's problem. I am only interested in the problems of African people. I heard the brother who just spoke so eloquently from the Black Farmers Movement, and I'm going to try to be at that conference on the first day, November the 1st. November the 2nd, I'm in Tulsa. I don't know how far Alabama is from Oklahoma, but I could probably, not that far, okay. Take my cell number right now. In fact, you can all take it. I'm going to give it now because I want you to text me, Elder, so I can make sure I'm there. 215-989-9858. I repeat, 215-989-9858. That's for anyone who needs to reach me. I want to get there for sure. We were actually in Indiana. There is a black farm in Indiana. It may be the oldest continuously owned black farmland in the United States, and we had an opportunity to go. Anybody remember that? What was the name of that farm? The elder there was actually featured in the Smithsonian here in D.C. Lyle Station, Indiana. You familiar with that, Bob?
Yes, I am.
We were there at Lyle Station, Indiana. So this is very timely right now because we just acquired 2 buildings in Wilmington, Delaware. Actually 4 buildings, but 2 schools where we're going to build the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy. And we want to purchase some farmland in Delaware so that our young men and women can learn how to farm. So we got to build that relationship. We should have black farmers markets all over America, not the ones by the Germans and the Amish, because we don't know what they're putting in those farms, but in that food. But he mentioned Black Star Line. He mentioned we don't own a shipping company. And 100 years ago, when the most honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, greatest black Pan-Africanist of all time and greatest black organizer in modern history, when he put the Black Star Line steamships out on the water, people laughed at Mr. Garvey and they didn't understand what he was doing. But I was doing some research earlier today to find out exactly what are the services that China is offering to Africa so much that has us becoming increasingly dependent on Chinese aid and so-called investment, which is the new word for exploitation, by the way. Investment is the new word for exploitation and neocolonialism. They don't call it neocolonialism and exploitation anymore. They call it investment. So they make it look good while they're robbing you today. But what I found is the #1 service that the Chinese is providing to continental Africa is transportation. That's the #1 service. Not just building of the railroads, but also transporting the food, transporting the raw materials, transporting all of those products that the world so desperately needs from Africa. So if China is needed for transport, what if we owned our own international shipping company? And Africa could be totally dependent upon African ships for what Africa needs. So although Garvey did that 100 years ago, here we are 100 years post-Garvey, and I'm dating that from the Garvey Convention, obviously 1920, okay? But post-Garvey, 100 years later, and we still don't have a shipping company. I just heard someone mention earlier that now Africa is making phones. We have certain African countries that are making phones. Well, that's good. But at the same time, it's not so good. Because we invented the cell phone. Yeah. So if African people invented the cell phone, why are we just now getting to the point where we can produce our own cell phones? What is China's second main contribution, in quotations, that is offered to Africa? One is transportation. #2 is power. Electricity, water power, alternative sources of fuel. Well, guess what? Who went to Europe and taught the Europeans how to harness power in the form of electric?
Go ahead.
Who went to China and taught the Chinese how to harness power in the form of electric? It was a black man from America, Louis Latimer, who wrote the textbook to teach countries how to light up an entire city at night. The Chinese didn't know how to do it, so they brought Latimer to China. The British didn't know how to do it, so they brought Latimer to Britain, and even the Canadians didn't know how to do it, so they brought Latimer to Canada. In other words, I have a problem with us thinking that we're picking up something new when it's something old, but we don't know that we're the ones who gave it to the world.
That's right.
You see, I always say that before we can have any other kind of revolution, brothers and sisters. And I mean this. And yes, I speak with a psychological bias because I'm a psychologist. But I say this, before we can have any other type of revolution, we need a revolution of the mind. There must be a psychological revolution. Because without the psychological revolution, nothing else changes. We're talking about reparations. And I love the sister on the video from the Gambia where I was in November with Dr. Layla Africa for the vegan conference a year ago, where she said, our reparations is repatriation. She said repatriation is our reparations. Now when we speak of repatriation, especially from a Garvey standpoint, we never once, first of all, Mr. Garvey never led a Back to Africa movement. The Honorable Marcus Garvey never led a Back to Africa movement. There was no movement ever called Back to Africa by any Pan-Africans. Not from Hemi Holland Garnett, not from Alexander Crummell, not from Edward Wilmot Blyden, not from John Brown Russworm, not from Paul Cuffey, not from Prince Hall, not from Garvey. There was no movement, not from Nkrumah, not from Lumumba, not from Sankara, not from Cabral, not from Sobukwe. No Pan-African has ever led a movement called Back to Africa. Repatriation is a strategic and scientific repatriation. It is not a wholesale pack up every Negro in the diaspora and bring them back home. Could you imagine what type of problems we would have if you took every Negro in America and brought him back to Africa as is? Could you imagine the problems you would have with the football and basketball and black boys who don't want to do nothing but become rappers, some of them? Or black women with the weave and perm, no attack on no sister here. Or the black men with their white wife. Is that what we want coming back to Africa? Not to mention the LGBTQTIZX. Is that what we want coming back to Africa? So it must be a strategic and selective Pan-African repatriation. It's true. Not everyone. Mr. Garvey said only those of you who have something of importance to contribute should go back home. I had a Negro text me last week. He said, Dr. Umar, I want to go back to Africa, but where can I get a job? I said, you need to stay here, my brother. You need to stay here. Because that is not the mindset you go to Africa with. We go to Africa to offer opportunities, not to steal them.
That's right.
We must be the solution. You can't go looking for one.
Okay.
So it needs it must be an enterprising personality. It must be a pioneering personality. It must be a trailblazing personality. And it must be a grassroots, non-bougie personality.
Right. Like
It must be a personality that can sleep in a sleeping bag if you got to sleep in a sleeping bag.
That's right.
It must be a personality where if you can't take a shower for a week, you just don't take one.
That's right.
And I mean that.
That's right.
And I mean that. We have to go fishing. For those of you who are Christians, you know the metaphor of Jesus going out to fish for followers. We have to go out and fish for the right type of Africans with the right mindset, because it only takes 2 coons to show up in Africa and destroy the relationship between Africans and Africans and Africa for the next century.
Right.
1 coon is enough to destroy a whole movement.
Go ahead.
And that's why I'm always looking for 2 things: people I can use and people I don't want to use.
That's right.
And you got to be able to delineate between the both.
Come on.
You can go to Liberia, look at Liberia's history, and look at when we went back to Liberia during slavery under the auspices of the American Colonization Society. We went back with a European mindset.
Think about
And a war was fought between indigenous Liberians and American Africans coming home, because although we were happy to be free from the white man, because we had been indoctrinated by the same white man we couldn't wait to get away from, we reinvented ourselves as that white man against our
Go ahead.
That's right.
Come on.
It happened in Sierra Leone. It happened. So you don't want to take every Negro back.
No.
And as we push the repatriation movement, you better best believe right now, right here in D.C., Homeland Security, CIA, FBI, they automatically grooming coons, paid agents to infiltrate any repatriation movement and sabotage it from within.
That's right. Black.
You know they on it already.
Yeah.
They got a whole crew going through training right now on how they're going to infiltrate the repatriation movement and destroy it.
Go ahead.
We go back to the 60s. What did they do? They would write letters from Malcolm X to Mr. Muhammad, and letters from Mr. Muhammad from Malcolm X. They would write letters from Huey P. Newton to Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, then write letters from Kwame Ture back to Stokely, fanning flames that were never even there. All the letters came from the FBI. They wrote letters from the Blackstone Rangers in Chicago, okay, to Fred Hampton, and wrote letters from Fred Hampton to the Blackstone Rangers, thinking they about to go to war, and both letters came from the FBI and CIA.
Go ahead. That's right. About it.
We got to pick and choose who we're going to struggle with.
Okay. Right.
See, I can work with a Negro, but I can't work with a coon. What's the difference?
Come on.
Right.
I can work with a Negro, but I can't work with a coon.
Definitely.
A Negro is an African whose ignorance is innocent. A Negro is an African whose ignorance is innocent. What does that mean? That means they may actually believe Jesus is white with blue eyes because it's all they know. They may actually believe Africa's nothing but AIDS, baboons, and malaria because it's all they ever know. A Negro's ignorance is innocent. A coon's ignorance is deliberate.
That's right.
A coon knows better. A coon knows what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be. A coon knows what we should be focusing on and what we should not be. But with a coon, he has a personal agenda whereby he benefits more from standing with the oppressor than with the oppressed.
Right. Come on now.
I can work with a Negro because I can bring him into consciousness. He's ignorant. But the coon, there's nothing I can do for him because he knows what the Negro needs to know. But he's made up his mind to fight against it. Brothers and sisters, these brothers and sisters, and I'm not going to keep you long at all because I know they got lunch waiting for us upstairs. I was looking, and this ain't the first time I looked at it, but I was looking today at the Geneva Convention Crimes Against Humanity Genocide definitions. And I was looking at this, and I want to read this real quickly. Where you at? Let me go back. Here we go. Listen to this. This is the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. Article 1 says, Article 2 says, in the present convention, Genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or part. Let me repeat this. Any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group as such. Letter A, killing members of the group. Letter B, causing serious bodily injury or mental harm to members of the group. Letter C, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or part. I want to read that one again. Because that speaks to indirect racism.
Go ahead.
Deliberately inflicting on the group conditions such as poverty, conditions mass incarceration, conditions miseducation, conditions gentrification, conditions a lack of access to wealth. Deliberately calculated to bring about physical destruction. Letter D, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group.
All right now.
Planned Parenthood was founded to eliminate black life. Planned Parenthood has taken more than 3 million African lives since the 1970s. We know this. We know right now the whole LGBTQ movement is a population control movement.
That's right.
That's right.
They not pushing same sex. They don't care if black women loving black women or black boys loving black boys. What they do know is if they can convince the kids to stay within the same gender, they ain't got to worry about no more fresh births.
That's right.
It's population control. And then it says, letter E, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. It's genocide. Forcibly transferring children of one group to another group. So when Child Protective Services go into our homes and take our kids away because you refuse to give them ADHD medications and give them to a white gay couple to raise, because that's what they're doing.
That's what they do.
Black kids are more likely to end up with a same-sex couple of another race. That's called genocide. Why am I even reading that? And what does that have to do with Pan-Africanism? Everything. Because in order for us to make the arguments we need to make, to give us the elbow room to build how we need to build, to reconnect with the mother continent, we have to stop identifying as Americans.
Come on.
Your power is not in your African Americanism. Your power is in your Africanism. See, when you say I'm an African American, you become a citizen thereof. And the only courts to which you can appeal for justice are the ones operated by this country. A citizen can't go to world court. A citizen must go to domestic court. Only members of a nation can go to world court. So the 50 million of us in America had better come up with a new terminology for how we want to refer to ourselves. But because calling ourselves African American is limiting our judicial options for reparations and international justice.
Because we need a nation.
See, when the police kill you, that's not an issue for the Geneva Convention. When the police kill you, that's not an issue for world court. That's not an issue for international criminal court. Why? Because you're an American citizen. Divorce yourself from that and free yourself up. But Negroes got this idea that there's something to be gained by staying in alignment with your Americanism. After 400 years, don't you see the history? We've been Anglo-Americans, Black Americans, Negro small n, Negro big N, Black small b, Black big B, because we got this idea that if we just call ourselves the right thing, we'll get free. We still fighting now in the Black conscious movement. What should we call ourselves? Because don't nobody want to be African no more. When I came up with the unapologetically African movement, I said when I came up with the unapologetically African movement, Negroes called it unapologetically black. I never said unapologetically black.
That's right.
I said unapologetically African, but you'd rather be a color than a person.
That's right.
You'd rather be an adjective than a noun. That self-hate is still within us to this very day. And that's why you got to have a psychological resurrection and reconstruction before you have anything else.
Come on.
Because without that psychological revolution, we'll be taking nothing but coons to Africa who will cause more coonism and more coon problems.
Come on.
You can be invited to Africa, but you can also be disinvited to Africa. For those who go back to meet with Africa, right now I'm working on a 3-nation repatriation community where I want to build the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy in 3 different African nations. with a supporting community right around it. And for those who go back with me, you're going to have to go through re-Africanization classes. Black woman, no weaving perm, whatever, go with me to Africa. Black man or homosexual white girl, ever go with me to Africa. It must be from a Garvey mentality. And when we talk about Garveyism and Pan-Africanism, what exactly is that anyway? Number one, let's summarize Pan-Africanism so we're on the same page. Because now with the popularity of Pan-Africanism, everybody seems to be one. Well, I grew up one. Principle number one, all African people, wherever they are in the world, are members of the same human family. And we identify with that human family. Because that identification with that human family supersedes our identity with anything else we believe in. In other words, you're never a Muslim who happens to be an African. You're an African who happens to be a Muslim. You're never a Christian who happens to be black. You're a black man who happens to be a Christian. You understand? So whether you are Yoruba or Igbo, whether you're Zulu or Xhosa, whether you're Wolof or Mandingo, whether you're Maasai or Kikuyu, you're African first. Whether you speak Spanish or French, whether you speak Zulu or whether you speak French, no matter what tongue is in your mouth, no matter whose flag you pray to, no matter what God you honor, we're African first. And why do we identify with our Africanity before we identify with any other membership? Because the only thing you belong to, and if I'm wrong, prove it, the only thing you belong to that you can never change, fixed by God, is your African racial membership. You can give up Islam tomorrow. You can give up the church tomorrow. You can give up your citizenship in your nation tomorrow. You can start speaking a new language tomorrow. But you are African for the rest of your life, and that's why identifying as African comes first. Principle number two. And these are in no order because they're equally important. Principle number two, as Africa goes, so goes all of her children in the diaspora. One of the biggest contradictions of the civil rights movement of America. One of the biggest contradictions of the freedom struggle in the United Kingdom. One of the biggest contradictions of the struggle in Black France and Paris. One of the biggest contradictions of our people's struggle in the Caribbean, Central and South America, is that all of those struggles in the Western world were totally separate, operationally, from liberation on the continent. See, why is the Chinese respected wherever the Chinese man goes? Because China is respected. Why is the European Jew respected wherever the European Jew goes? Because Israel is respected. Why is the Russian or the Anglo-Saxon respected wherever they go? Because of the condition and respect given to the crown in England, and the condition and the respect given to Russian people or given to any other people. And the reason Africans are disrespected wherever we go is because Africa is not the way she needs to be. And the problem with us in America, we think you're actually going to get freedom without having that freedom being anchored into a nation state from which or to which you owe your spiritual, anthropological, and ancestral origin.
That's true.
If there is no past for you in Africa, there damn sure ain't a future for you anywhere else. So as Africa goes, so goes we. When people look at you, you represent Africa. I don't care if you're African American, Jamaican, UK, it don't matter. When they look at us, they see Africans. They never see Americans. They don't see black French. They don't see black British. They see African. And the respect you get is a direct result of the power relationship that exists between Africa and the oppressing nations. And what is the nature of the relationship between Africa and France? What is the nature of the relationship between Africa and the UK? What is the nature of the relationship between Africa and Belgium? What is the nature of the relationship between Africa and any of the European nations? It is a debtor-slave relationship. And that is why our relationship with the white man in America is a debtor-slave relationship. It shouldn't be that way. And it can be changed overnight. Mr. Garvey said if we knew ourselves today, we have a new reality tomorrow. Africa now backwards by coincidence. This is deliberate engineering by white folks in Europe and coons on the continent.
That's right.
You need the collaboration of coons and crackers in order for this thing to work. The collaboration Federation of Coons and Crackers. Right up the street, we got the World Bank and International Monetary Fund. Right here in D.C., the World Bank and International Monetary Fund. And it's ironic that some of us would dare call ourselves fans and supporters of Barack Hussein Obama. Because Barack Hussein Obama did more in his 8 years as president to empower the IMF and World Bank in Africa than probably almost any president before him for at least 4 terms. Why is Africa still in the conditions she's in? Because when Africa comes to the West looking for money, there's conditions on those loans. There's 3 main conditions on those loans. You want some hospitals? Sure, we're going to fund you. You want some schools? You want some roads? We're going to fund you. You need some food? Some medication? We're going to fund you. But there's a couple of rules you got to play by, Nigeria. There's a couple of rules you got to play by, Ghana. There's a couple of rules you're going to play by, Malawi, Congo. And what are the rules? Rule number 1, population control. If you want these loans, you got to legalize homosexuality and lesbianism. Why do you think Barack Hussein Obama threatened the president of Liberia? I know because I was there at the time. There was a protest outside the house. Obama said, if you don't legalize same-sex marriage, we'll cut your funding. He went to Uganda, did the same thing. Went to Tanzania, did the same thing. Went to Zimbabwe, did the same thing. Rest in paradise, the Robert Mugabe's response was the most eloquent of them all.
That's right. That's right.
He said, this white man's black man, Barack Obama, is coming to Africa to tell us that we got to let men marry men and women marry women. Mugabe said, when is he going to get married to a man, for crying out loud? When Obama marries a man, then he can come and tell me to normalize it. Until then, leave me alone. The president of Tanzania said, how dare you tell the oldest people on earth, go ahead, how to reorganize their family structure. Why are they pushing that? Because it's population control. I just saw a video the other day where a former Homeland Security undercover CIA agent said that he was part of a task force to put the AIDS virus in immunizations that go to Africa.
That's right.
He admitted it on the news. Yes, they made AIDS, Fort Detrick, Maryland, to eliminate African people. And then they said the AIDS come from the Congo. And the reason they said AIDS come from the Congo, because the Congo is the single richest piece of real estate on earth. So if we can convince the world that the only thing in Congo is monkeys and AIDS, nobody will go. So we can continue to rob it blind of every mineral it has, especially the coltan, which we need for them cell phones, laptops, airplanes, radios, and everything else electromagnetic. For those of you who saw the Black Panther movie, vibranium was a metaphor for coltan. It's the coltan that gave birth to the technological revolution. Ryan Coogler couldn't say it outright, so he transformed coltan into vibranium. So number 1, you got to make your country gay, because we got to reduce the numbers.
Think about
You heard the
that.
brother from ECOWAS today. What did the elder say? He said, if we don't stop, sooner or later, there'll be more people in Africa who are not African. There'll be more people in Africa who are not African. And then people ask me the question, well, why so many Africans want to leave Africa? And so many non-Africans want to go to Africa? I said, because Africa is a paradise if you can access funding for your dreams. The Chinese shows up in Africa with funding. The French, the Lebanese, robbing Liberia blind, show up with funding. The East Indians in Johannesburg and Soweto show up with funding. If you have access to capital, Africa is a gold mine. But you gotta have access to the capital. If you don't have any capital, Africa can be a difficult place to live in, but we as $2 trillion American Africans, we can be the solution for so much on the continent. And I want to be clear, as we go back to Africa, we're not going back the way we went back to Liberia, as Mr. and Mrs. Know-it-alls. We have the solutions to Africa. Sit down, Nigeria, and let us tell you how to fix this. That is a very Eurocentric approach. That ain't how we're going back. We're going to the table as equals. We have something that we can invest in. You have something you can invest in us. We're going to power share for the liberation of all African people in the African continent. We're not going to dictate anything because you have far more to learn from Africa than you could ever teach it. You have far more to learn from Africa than you could ever teach it. So after they deal with population control, what's the next thing? 1,000% interest on the loans. You ever wonder why the more money Africa get, the worse off Africa is? The more loans Africa get, the worse off she is. Why is that? Because of the interest rate. You can never pay it off. They set it up like that. They set it up. Every loan, you fall further and further into economic slavery. With every loan, further and further into economic debt. And then people ask me the question, Dr. Umar, is this the only way it can be? No, it's not the only way it can be. There's another way. But the other way is hard work. The other way takes elbow grease. The other way takes long days and sleepless nights. And that other way is to turn to the people in your country, African heads of state, and say, listen, we can keep on taking these loans from France and the UK and the US. We can keep on falling further and further into economic slavery to the World Bank and IMF and DC, but there's another way we can do this. We can build from inside. And building from inside ain't easy. Building from inside means we only eat if we sweat. Building from inside means we might make a mistake engineering our country 10 times before we get it right, but at least we don't owe nobody nothing for what we did. See, the problem with Africa is no different than the problem in Black America, and that is insincere, self-serving leadership. See, most black leaders in the world, I don't care what it is, Africa, America, Caribbean, UK, most black leaders in the world are not in leadership to help nobody.
That's right.
They're in leadership to help themselves.
And their families.
And their families only.
That's what they do.
The average president of a Caribbean nation or an African nation is going to spend their 8 years in office preparing for life after office.
Teach.
Did you hear what I said? They spend their 8 years in office preparing for life after office. See, right now, the white man is running around writing articles on African corruption all of a sudden.
Oh, man.
Now, the white man made Africa corrupt. Let me be clear about something. The white man, the way he threatens the African presidents and heads of state, is he sets up a situation where you got to break your own country's nation in order to, your own laws, your own country's laws in order to stay alive. In other words, he forces the corruption on you to make sure he got something on you in case you decide to not stop doing things the way he wants to do it. If the white man really wanted to deal with corruption, why don't he investigate the fact that there's billions of dollars of tariffs and duties that are owed from white corporations that do business in Africa that are still unpaid? What about the white man's corruption? The Chinese are doing nothing but copying what the white man did and doing it better. That's all the Chinese did. That's all they're doing. And unfortunately, because again, the African leaders are more concerned with being popular than being effective.
That's right.
They're more concerned with being popular than being progressive. They would rather borrow and borrow and borrow and sink the country further into debt. Why? Because even though I just borrowed $100 million, my people feel like we're headed in the right direction. Because we got schools now we didn't have before. We got roads now we didn't have before. We're giving out jobs now we didn't have before. So for those brothers and sisters in a particular African nation, any of them who don't think progressively, they'll say he was a good president. Why was he a good president? I got a job under him. I got a nice house. My child can go to a good school. I see development. I see new roads. But what you're not looking at is the price tag on all that. You're not looking at the fact that because this particular president borrowed so much money from the white man, the next president might not be able to borrow a cent. The next president will incur the debt of this president, and because the next president is more sincere and authentic, and he's going to make the people build with their own hands, they're going to hate him. That's right. And they might depose him. And then the CIA will come in and finance the opposition and turn the good African leaders into criminals and turn the criminals into saints. That's how it works. You don't judge a president in Africa by how many jobs they made. You judge a president in Africa based on to what extent is the people more independent now than we were before you took office. And let us stop letting people play this integration versus separation dichotomous game on us. This ain't about integration and separation. Black people are already separate from white folks. You can't get no more separate than you already are. Yes. Only time you see them is when you go to spend money with them or work with them. That's the only time you see crackers. You're already separated. It's not a question of integration and separation. It's a question of integration versus independence. We want independence. And what does that mean? We want our own banks, our own schools, our own hospitals, our own access to wealth. That's what we want. We want the freedom to determine our future. And some people have trouble understanding that. In America, in Africa, in the Caribbean islands, they don't understand this fight for independence. Why did Patrice Lumumba get his body sliced up into little teeny pieces for independence?
Come on.
Go ahead.
Come on.
Why did Robert Sobukwe get his dreams cut short for independence?
Wow.
Why did Walter Rodney in the Caribbean islands get blown up in a car for independence?
Go ahead.
Amilcar Cabral, Guinea Bissau, blown up for independence. Why is it so important? Independence is important because without it, liberty is a joke. And let us be clear.
That's right.
Let us not fall for the democracy trap, because what the white man is doing is he has the whole Africa focused on who's going to be the next president of your country. That is not the most important question. Why is that the most important question? You go to Africa, the biggest question, who going to be the next president? That ain't my next question. The president is only a face. The president is a popularity contest. Africa don't need democracy. Africa needs development. But the white man got every country in Africa worrying about voting. They done ran the same game on Africa they ran on black America. We got out of slavery, 13th Amendment, 14th Amendment, 15th Amendment. Now you can vote. I can vote, but where's my wealth at? Where's my opportunities at? Where's my land at?
Right, come on.
Voting don't make me equal. Having power makes me equal, and land is the basis of it. But in Africa, no, it's all about who's going to win the election. Listen to me. If voting could change anything, it would be illegal.
That's right.
Voting don't change nothing. Voting has never changed nothing, and it never will. You look at black America, everything we got through what? Organized street protests.
That's right.
Dr. King was never a politician, to his credit. And I'm not demonizing politicians, but I appreciate the visionary of Dr. King, who said I would never run for an office because I could do more for my people in the streets than I could ever do in somebody's office.
Go ahead.
We got the Civil Rights Act through street protests. Voting Rights Act, street protests. The end of Jim Crow through street protests. How did Africa get free in the first place? Did y'all vote y'all way out of colonialism? No, you fought. That was blood.
Yeah.
The road for freedom is paved in blood. And I don't like speaking about that, because that's the last stage of revolution. Some of us think the blood is the first stage. The blood is not the first stage. And you know why the blood is not the first stage of the revolution? Because the people who you're asking to get their lives up for the freedom and independence of a people have to know what they're giving their lives for.
That's right.
I got to know that we own the wealth before I give my life for it. I got to know that my child is going to get a decent education before I give my life for freedom. The military struggle is last. Everything else goes first. But the final fight must be a physical one. It's a shame that Africa is going to have to go through a second independence struggle. This time from the Chinese.
Teach.
That's right. Everything Nkrumah did. Everything Lumumba did. Sekou Touré, all the independence of Murray Michel, all the independence leaders, everything they did 50 years ago, we got to do it again because we made mistakes in freedom. One of the biggest problems is the fact that they killed off most of the real leaders and put puppets in place. And those puppets signed away the entire freedom that our ancestors fought, died, and bled for. They signed it away. They don't get me wrong. Some of them had no choice. Because when colonialism was up and the French started packing their bags, guess what the French was doing? The French started sabotaging the water, blowing up institutions, messing with the power lines, sabotaging the railroads that they built. Why? Because we didn't build this for black folks, we built this for the French government. So the African heads of state said, wait a minute, what are you doing? We still need this. French said, well, you have to pay us for this, otherwise we blowing it up. If you don't believe me, do your research. Britain did the same thing. On the way out the door, after independence came, they started sabotaging the infrastructure in Nigeria. They started sabotaging the infrastructure in Kenya. They started sabotaging the infrastructure in Ghana. And they said, if you don't want us to keep on sabotaging, you're going to have to pay us. And that gave birth to the debt problem Africa got now.
Good teaching, good teaching.
And that's why those of us in America who fighting for reparations, let us not limit reparations to the black American reality. One of the first demands on the reparations table must be total disqualification of any debt Africa owes to the white man. How in the hell can Africa owe the white man? You done stole our people. You done stole our resources. You done stole our animals. You done stole our cultural products. You go to the British Museum today.
You'll see it. You'll see it.
Look at what's in the British Museum.
You'll see it.
The stuff that people come to see was taken right out of Africa.
Stole us.
The first thing on our reparations demand list is you must suspend any debts that Africa owes.
You stole us. You sold us. You owe us. You stole us.
You
stole us.
You owe us.
You owe us. Yeah.
You owe us. Oh, yes, you did.
Brother asked the question earlier, what language should we be under?
Teach.
Create at home.
I'm trying to find out who said there should only be one.
That's right. Come on.
I'm trying to find out why must there be a single language for all African people?
Teach.
I am of the opinion that it should be more than one language.
Come on.
And speaking as a school psychologist, I can tell you that children who are bilingual tend to have a greater level of intelligence than those who are not. There's something about the brain that when you speak more than one language, you access a greater part of it. So as opposed to choosing one language to introduce us to Pan-African thought and communication, why don't we take one language from each of the 5 major regions of the continent
Go ahead.
and make us all learn all 5?
Come on.
Why can't you have one language from West Africa that's mandatory that everyone speaks? One language from Southern Africa that's mandatory that everyone speaks? One language from Northern Africa that's mandatory that everyone learn how to speak? One language from East Africa that's mandatory that everyone speaks? And one language from Central Africa that's mandatory that everyone speaks?
Come on.
And that should be based on strategic necessity, not the arrogance of ethnicity.
Come on. Go ahead.
Strategic necessity, not the arrogance of ethnicity. Because one thing I know as someone who goes to Africa all the time, unfortunately, tribalism can be a bigger issue than fighting white supremacy.
Yeah.
The average African nation, they don't identify with the nation, they identify with the ethnicity. Are you Nigerian? No, I'm Yoruba. Are you Senegalese? No, I'm Wolof. And don't get me wrong, I respect and understand why that is. Because when the white man came in and carved up Africa like a cake in 1884, 1885 at the Berlin Conference, he paid no respect to traditional natural ethnicity boundaries. It was based on resources. So I know everyone in Nigeria was not necessarily a historically homogenous set of people. I get it. But for the sake of African independence, for the sake of liberty for us all, you have to put an end to petty tribal differences, because whenever we bicker, our enemy wins.
That's right.
We must have a goal that is greater than just being part of our ethnic groups. That's one of the reasons why politicians don't improve Africa. Because most of us vote in Africa for the politician who belongs to our ethnic group. You might know that the Zulu brother no good. The Swazi might be a better candidate. But I'm Zulu, so I'm going to vote for him even though he's a stone cold traitor. I might know that the Kikuyu brother is no good in Kenya, but I'm a Maasai. And because I'm a Maasai, I'm going to vote for the Maasai sellout because we belong to the same crew. And why? Because I can get a couple crumbs from the table. That's why we don't get nowhere. The white man has been manipulating ethnic differences and ethnic tensions in Africa since the first day he landed. In fact, that's how he even got to where he is now. Because he can play them against them. But I ask you a question. As important as ethnicity is,
If I find a skeleton under the ground in Nigeria, can I look at anything on that skeleton that's going to tell me that this is an Igbo skeleton versus a Yoruba skeleton?
No.
If I find a skeleton in South Africa, is there anything in that skeleton that's going to differentiate a Zulu skeleton from a Xhosa skeleton?
No.
If I go to Senegal, is there anything in that skeleton that's going to tell me whether it's a Wolof or a Mandingo? Hell no, they African skeletons.
Black power. The power.
Good teach.
As Africa goes, so goes us.
That's right.
What's the third principle of Pan-Africanism? That we all rise together or none of us will rise at all. That's a hard pill to swallow. Because the white man has not only taught us tribalism, he made us worship it too. Even in America, where many of us don't even know where we come from in Africa, we will create an ethnicity and fight all over. So you go into the conscious community, you got God and Earth, this is hypothetical. God and Earth fighting the Moor. Hebrew against the Nawabi. The Garveyites against the socialists. So ethnicity ain't really the problem either. Because even if there was no ethnicity, you'll make up a reason to fight one another. Because what the white man did, one of the biggest side effects of slavery and colonialism is he made African people comfortable at having no control over their destiny. You're the only people in the world who are comfortable with no control over their destiny. When you watch Chinese come to America, when you watch Chinese come to Africa, when you watch Chinese go to the UK, the first thing they secure is their destiny. They're going to buy some land, they're going to open some businesses, and they're going to start a school. From the beginning, we're going to make sure that destiny is secure. The future of our people, not black folks. First thing we do is get us a Benz, a cell phone, and a white girl. And then we worry about the rest of it. And then we worry about the rest of it. Brothers and sisters,
Tell the truth.
Marcus Garvey came up with the concept of the United States of Africa. Osajifo, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, Patrice Lumumba, and Amilcar Cabral, and Sekou Touré, and Robert Sobukwe took it to another level. But the biggest obstacle to the United States of Africa, the biggest obstacle to an Africa without borders, the biggest obstacle to the total integration of the African continent is the lack of a Central African Bank. Without the Central African Bank, there can be no true African independence. And that's one of the reasons why they assassinated Umar Gaddafi. Now, I'm going to clarify, I'm a Gaddafi fan. He was not an African, he was an Arab, he's not a hero of mine. I do appreciate what he was going to do. But it was not his idea. That idea came from sub-Saharan Africa. He just happened to have the money to be able to implement the idea, and I appreciate him for that. I appreciate him for that. Okay? He was murdered because he wanted to build a Central African Bank in collaboration with the sub-Saharan states, and had they done that, the minute Africa builds a Central African Bank, white supremacy is over with. The minute Africa builds a Central African Bank, white supremacy is dead on the right. And do you know why that is? The power of the UK is the resources of Africa. The power of the US is the resources of Africa. And the United States dollar is no longer on a mineral standard. It is a promissory note. You cannot change it in for mineral wealth. So if Africa, the richest continent on earth, creates her own currency, I said if Africa, the richest continent on the earth, creates her own currency, do you know what that does? It makes the African currency #1 on earth, and everybody else subservient. But that ain't the only thing they was going to do after the Central African Bank. What was the second thing on the list? After they built a bank and then tied it to the natural resources of Africa, the second thing on the list was to take over the telecommunications network in Africa. Do you know how much money white companies make by selling cell phone minutes to our brothers and sisters on the continent? Do you know how much money they make with their cable programs on the continent, with their internet on the continent? It is a multi-billion-dollar business in Africa to sell airtime on your phones. So what they were going to do was totally nationalize the telecommunications network on the continent and cut the white man out. You're talking about tens of millions of dollars. It was economic revolution. It was economic revolution. It wasn't his idea. He just had the money to do it. And guess what? As a result of what they did to Gaddafi, other African nations are saying to themselves, well, hell, if they can do that to a man with a standing army, if they can do that to a man with a standing army, imagine what they can do to me. Listen, nobody want to die in here, not young. But for me, a prerequisite to be a president of an African nation, a prerequisite to be president of a Caribbean nation, prerequisite to be president of a Central or South American African nation is you got to be willing to die in office. If you're not willing to die in office, you are a traitor waiting to happen.
That's right.
Black
But the problem with Africa is the same problem with Black America. We think that our leaders must all be trained by the white man in his university.
Go ahead.
Whenever Black America has a problem, we go look to the PhDs to solve it. Whenever Africa has a problem, y'all look to the PhDs to solve it. Whenever Jamaica has a problem, or the UK got a problem, Canada got a problem, we go look to the college-educated Negro files to save us. Why are you looking for the person whose value system is most in line with your oppressor to deliver you from that oppressor? I said, why are you looking for the Negro whose value system is most in line with the oppressor to deliver you from that oppressor? Dr. Carter G. Woodson, from right here in D.C., wrote a phenomenal book while the Honorable Marcus Garvey was in jail, 1926, Miseducation of the Negro. It should be required reading for any organizer or revolutionary. Woodson said that if you control a man's thinking, you don't have to worry about his behavior. Woodson said if you control a man's thinking, you don't have to tell him to go to the back door. He'll go anyway.
Go ahead.
And if he gets to the back door and there ain't no door, he will make the door and walk out of it. That's why the psychological... Excuse me, let me get some water. Y'all would talk about it. As I close in 5 minutes here. That's why the psychological revolution must be first, because we have mentally ill Africans.
That's right.
In military, and I went to a military high school, you know, in military they have the concept of the MIA, missing in action, soldiers who are missing. Well, we have a lot of psychological MIAs.
Yeah.
MIA, a double metaphor. Psychologically missing in action, a mentally ill African.
That's right.
And you got to be able to identify the MIAs in your community, because not all of us are psychologically present and ready for revolution.
Come on.
That sister is MIA. He's a MIA. He's a psychological casualty of this war. They may not be physically dead, but they mentally dead. And you got to recognize a psychological casualty as sure as you need to recognize the physical one.
Come on. Come on. To me.
Brothers and sisters, we got to redefine what it means to be African again.
Yeah.
Because religion has forced all of us into a colorblind political ideology.
Right, right.
And so when you go to Africa today, you got Arabs saying I'm African.
Yeah.
You go to Africa today, you got East Indians saying they're African. You go to Africa today, you got Lebanese and European Jews who say they're African because they was born there. I refute that. We got to redefine Africa, because if you don't redefine Africa, you're basically helping the colonizer take over the continent. Chinese have to know, I don't care if you've been here 10 generations, you are Chinese. You are not an African. Okay. An African, you must have anybody in Africa who is not an African is either an invader or a descendant of an invader.
Come on, go ahead.
And we got to be clear about that. I remember I was at the UK speaking in Hyde Park where Mr. Garvey used to speak, and I got into a fight with the Arabs. Because I told the Arabs, you're not African. And they said, I'm Moroccan, I'm Egyptian, I'm all this. You are not an African. You are the descendant of an invader.
Go ahead.
And we got to be clear about that, because too many African governments are making it easy for these people to come in and take over. And why is that China so in love with Africa all of a sudden? First of all, did you know that China owns 1/3 of Africa's debt? 1/3 of the entire amount of money that Africa collectively owes outside the continent, 1/3 of it is owed to China. China wanted to be 100%, because once it becomes 100%, China owns Africa.
Yeah.
You got Chinese men in Nigeria right now impregnating black Nigerian women like it's going out of style. And why they doing it? The same reason Julius Caesar, when he came in with his army, and when Napoleon came in with their army years ago, Centuries ago, what did they do? They impregnated the African women. Why did they do that? Why did they have babies with the indigenous African women? Because they can raise up their biracial children to rule in absentia. Although they were phenotypically African, they would be psychologically Chinese, psychologically British. And you see the Chinese doing it right now. In Nigeria, it's a big problem with the Chinaman having babies with Nigerian women. In Djibouti, it's a big problem. They even have a Chinese base in Djibouti. China has loaned Djibouti
In Africa.
the money owed to China from Djibouti is more than 10 times the national annual product of Djibouti. Did y'all hear what I just said? China has given Djibouti a loan that is in excess of 10 times the gross national product annually for Djibouti. Why would they loan the country money that they know they cannot pay back?
Think about it.
Because it means I own you. It means I own you. And there's 3 big reasons why China all up in Africa. Number 1, China is overpopulated. I know because I've been there twice.
Right.
China is overpopulated, and China is looking for places around the world to dump its unwanted Chinese.
Go ahead.
Don't that sound familiar, United States of America?
They did it
Wasn't
too.
this country people with the criminals and throwaways of British civilization?
Right.
But it's the same thing China doing right now in Africa.
Go ahead.
They need places to send Chinese because it's too crowded. Number 2, China is looking at how much money they can make and save by paying brothers and sisters on the continent pennies to work. They said we can pay Africans to work even less than what we pay Chinese. We can pay Africans to work even less than what we pay the Taiwanese and the Vietnamese.
Right.
Africa is home to the cheapest labor in the world. That's why China is going. Number 3, China is the #1 manufacturer of small arms and cheap products. Let me say it again. China is the #1 manufacturer in the world of small guns and cheap products. Lotion, soap, towels, clothes, flip-flops, socks, sandals. Y'all know what I'm talking about. What better place in the world to dump your useless junk from your factories? What better place in the world to take tons of stuff nobody in China want and dump it and sell it and make money off of your junk than Africa? And number 4, China wants total control of the resources. And let us be clear. China hasn't donated $1 to Africa. It's all loans. I'm going to say it again. China hasn't donated $1 to Africa. It's all in the form of loans. And when you can't pay back, you have to give up concessions. Land, minerals, waterways. Have you seen what China is doing in Jamaica? Because of insincere Jamaican leadership in the land of Marcus Garvey?
Go ahead.
They even gave them exclusive control of certain pieces of land, exclusive control over certain waterways in the island of Jamaica. That's what they gave to China now. China over there opened up schools for black folks in Jamaica. What the hell I need with a Chinese school?
Go ahead. Come on.
They opened up 2 hospitals in Jamaica, ran by Chinese. You don't know what the hell they putting in our kids in there. Chinese don't like black folks.
No,
Sir.
Nobody do.
When I was in China, you know what I learned in China? That the Chinese government has a hit squad. When you have a visa that says you only can stay for 2 weeks in China, they will send out the hit squad to go and find you, and they will drag your black ass to the airport. Excuse me.
Go ahead. That's right.
And they will pay for your flight back home. They don't want no Africans in China who don't have a right to be there. I'm trying to figure out, why does Africa roll out a golden map for China? And China don't do such things for Africa. They treat us with the greatest disrespect. Africans in China have it hard. They marry the Chinese women over there. And then the Chinese women treat them like slaves and take their whole paycheck and say, if you say anything, I'll get you deported. I'm telling you what I learned while I was there. In China, they don't have no civil rights law. When you open up the Chinese newspapers and they got a job, they'll say no Africans need apply. Only white folks need apply. Only Chinese, yes! There's certain places in China you can't live if you're black. They don't hide it, they tell you to your face.
Go ahead.
Restaurants too.
I'm trying to figure out why Africa is treating China like a saint when China treats Africans like devils. As I rap. As I rap. Not all activism is created equal. I gotta say this.
Say it.
Because when somebody says they're an activist, we all jump up and say, okay, they all activists. Not all activism is created equal.
Come on.
I have 3 categories. You have superficial activism, you have soft activism, and then you got hard and original activism. Superficial activism is an activism that is only designed to get attention for your agenda. That's it. It don't change nothing. It don't fight nothing. It don't challenge nothing. It's just a big mouth talking. That's superficial activism.
Come on.
And some of y'all get swept up with superficial activism. Y'all hear a good voice and you go flying off. Oh, that brother was good. I'm going beyond that.
Come on.
I want to see what the agenda is, but before we even get to the agenda, I want to know who your funders are. See, another principle of Pan-Africanism through Garvey eyes is you cannot be funded by the people you fight. Did y'all hear that?
That's right.
For me, your organization is not a black organization if it takes money from non-African people. There's no way you can sit in here and say, well, you know, I'm president of the black this, and I'm the leader of the African this, but I get funds from the U.S. government. I get funds from Rockefeller. I get funds from the Ford Foundation. I get funds from Bank of America. I get funds from Walmart. I got a grant from Burger King and McDonald's.
Think about these things.
That is a contradiction of revolutionary struggle. Your struggle will not be financed by your oppressor. Never has, never will. That's another big problem we got in black America. That's another reason why we haven't made more progress in America, and it's another reason why we haven't made more progress in Africa, because too many grassroots organizations in Africa are also looking for funding from the same people who got their foot on Africa's neck.
Come on.
Go ahead.
Come on.
Yep.
And then you got soft activism.
Uh-oh.
This is normally our entertainers and our rappers who get on TV and talk like they black and proud, but they don't really do nothing. It's all speeches at the Grammys and speeches at the Oscars and speeches on your podcast. But what are you doing in the streets to make anything different? You might talk a good word, but where's the action? And then you got your hard activism. These are people who are trying to do what? Not just change opinions, change conditions. That's what I'm about. That's what I'm about. When I'm sitting with my brothers and sisters in the Black Conscious Movement, I always ask them, what are you changing or what are you building? That's it! Well, brother, I just put a book out. I don't care about no damn books! What have you changed? Or what? Brother, I just put out my 5th DVD. I don't give a damn about no more documentaries. What have you changed? What have you
built? That's a good question.
That's the only thing that matters to the
good question.
serious revolutionary Pan-African nationalists. Brothers and sisters, as I prepare to wrap this up, I talked about the interest in Africa. I talked about the population control in Africa that the World Bank requires. And the third thing the World Bank and IMF requires from right here in DC or African countries looking for loans is they require that you have a free market economy. I want y'all to get this. Because young African Americans don't understand why Africa's still where she is. They say, well, Africans, they've been free for 50 years. Why Nigeria ain't doing better? Why Ghana ain't doing better? Because one of the conditions of the loan is you got to have a free market economy. Let me give you an example of what I mean by this. I'm in Nigeria. And Nigeria has an abundant supply of fresh water. The Nigerian government wants to nationalize its spring water. They want to sell their own water. They don't want no water coming in from anywhere else. We don't want no Poland Springs. We don't want no Avion. We don't want no Fiji. We got our own water. So we don't want no competition. But then the white man says, if you take this $10 million loan, you got to have a free market economy. You know what that means?
That means I gotta let Poland Springs come in and compete with my Nigerian water. I gotta let Avion come in and compete with my Nigerian water. I gotta let Fiji come in and compete with my Nigerian water. Oh yes, Malawi is known for tea. Malawi has its own tea. Malawi don't need no Lipton. They don't need no Tetley. They don't need nobody tea. Then the white man says, Malawi, you can't do that. If you want this loan, you gotta let Tetley come in and compete with your tea. Senegal, you got your own salt. That's good to know, Senegal, but guess what? You gotta let Morton's come in. And so what happens in Africa is you have indigenous African products. Water, tea, coffee, chocolate,
Salt,
rubber,
chocolate.
all types of plants. The white man say, you gotta have a free economy. So the white man sabotages Africa's economy because now you gotta let all the other water companies come in and compete, and because they can produce it, manufacture it, ship it, and sell it cheaper than you, what happens to Nigeria's indigenous water company after 5 years? Sabotaged out of business. And why was it sabotaged out of business? Because it had to compete with white folks who don't even live there.
Go ahead. Isn't that something to think about?
That's why Africa can't grow. But what if Black America had our $2 trillion organized to the point where Africa could borrow from us? I mean, let's look at this now. We $2 trillion. Do you know we're the richest group of Africans on the planet? African Americans are the richest group of Africans on the planet. $2 trillion is greater than the gross national product of 1/3 of all countries in Africa for the year. I said 50 million American Africans bring home more pay than the entire economy of certain African nations.
Something to think about.
If we were organized, we could call up Nigeria, we could call up Ghana, we could call up Zimbabwe, we could call up Lesotho, we can call up Cote d'Ivoire, we can call them all up and say, listen, don't take that loan from Obama and them and Trump and them. Don't take it. How much y'all need? 2 million? We got you. We just want some land to build some communities for our people. The white man is only concerned about one thing. There's only one thing that threatens the white man, and he said it. Zbigniew Brzezinski said it, who founded the Trilateral Commission for the Rockefellers back in 1973. He said the only threat to American interests in Africa is a strategic, economic, and political unification of Africans in America and Africans in Africa. He said you can never let those two groups ever get on the same accord. If Africans in America and Africans in Africa ever unite in a meaningful way, white supremacy is done. Do you know what he just said? Do you know what he just said? He just said the only threat to the New World Order is revolutionary Pan-African nationalism. So if anybody want to know what's going to be the philosophy of free black folks, you can listen to the white man, because that's all you listen to anyway. He said it's the Pan-Africanists.
Go ahead. Teach him.
He ain't worried about nobody's religion.
Teach.
He ain't worried about nobody's Bible or Quran. Nothing wrong with the religions, don't get me wrong, but one of the things we have to do as we move into the 21st century is keep religion out of the politics.
That's right.
Keep religion out!
Ain't got nothing to do with it.
Because everybody think their religion is better than somebody else's, and don't none of your religions serve the best interests of African folks. In Black America, you got a white Jesus. In Black Africa, you got a white Jesus. What difference does it make?
Think it over. Think it over.
Only difference is in Africa that Jesus is actually walk.
I got that.
Brothers and sisters, I want to close with a quote from my ancestor, Frederick Douglass. But before I do want to say this. The sister earlier spoke on the Amber Geiger situation. Unfortunately, I think that was a pivotal time in the Black American sojourn in America, because I think Amber Geiger, I'm going to call it an acquittal. Yeah. Because she ain't going to do 10 years. And she might not even do 5, which is the minimum required before she can seek probation. She's getting out before it. I think it's one of the reasons why they killed that brother. The witness who was murdered, I believe Dallas police killed him, not no thugs from Louisiana. They killed him because he was set to testify in the civil suit. They had to get him out the way. They're going to get Amber Geiger home. And you know what's so sad? We created the narrative that they can use to get her home. Have you ever seen a case in your life where somebody convicted of murder in a courtroom
gets more compassion than a person who was murdered.
Never.
I ain't never seen a convicted killer get more love and support inside of a courtroom than the victim. The judge hugged her, his family hugged her, and every juror damn near hugged her.
Take it over.
So guess what the white man going to do now? He just figured something out. He said, wait a minute.
Use the white
When
one.
we killed Michael Brown, that started a revolt. When we snatched Freddie Gray's spinal cord from the back of his brain, that started a revolt. When we suffocated Eric Gardner to death, that started a protest. When we did it to Walter Scott and Philando Castile, when we choked out Sandra Bland in prison, when we shot little Tamir Rice, that started a protest. But we just noticed, when the white man does the killing, we get backlash. But when the white woman does the killing,
She gets compassion.
when the white woman does the killing,
That's a good
we
thing.
get compassion.
Think about that.
So guess what's going to start happening in America? They're going to let the white women do the killing now because y'all love those white girls. I mean, after all.
Teach on that way.
After all.
They love women Flintstone, don't they?
Educated
Teach on that sheet up. They ain't want to teach on the sheet
Educated
up.
black men.
She back on the front.
Educated black men marry outside their race more than all other men put together. Educated black men marry outside their race more than all other men put together. So if black men are in love with a white girl anyway, black women, you spend $20 billion a year trying to get your hair to look like hers. I mean, after all, if the black man wants to marry the white girl and the black one wants to be the white girl, why don't we let the killing get done by the white girl? I conclude.
Preach.
I conclude by saying I would invite all of you to join me 3 hours away from here on Monday, November the 11th, which is the anniversary of the killing of the greatest black revolutionary to ever walk on American soil, and that is the prophet and Reverend Nat Turner. Every November the 11th, 11/11 is the day they killed Nat Turner.
Think about it.
Okay, the war started on my birthday, August the 21st, 1831. Nat Turner went into hiding. He was captured October the 30th. And then he was hanged November the 11th. And every year for the past 9 years, I've been going down to the Nat Turner land in Druryville, Virginia, where we honor not only Nat Turner, but all of our ancestors who paid the ultimate price for our liberation.
Oh, yeah.
So for those of you who have never been to Nat Turner land, this is our 400 years in America under white oppression. You need to come on down and pay your respects to the greatest of the great. When Nat Turner led that war, Frederick Douglass was only a little boy. When Nat Turner led that war, Harriet Tubman was only a little girl. Movie, but there's nothing like living it and walking the same land that Nat Turner walked.
Yes.
That true black preacher that we've been lost about. Brothers and sisters, I close with a quote from my ancestor Frederick Douglass, who died in Washington, D.C., February the 20th of 1895. My family was brought to America from Nigeria, 1701. Black man by the name of Bailey. He was brought to Talbot County, Eastern Shore, Maryland. He married a black woman by the name of Selah, for whom my 8-year-old daughter is named. 1745, they had Grandma Jenny. 1774, Grandma Jenny gave birth to Grandma Betsy. Grandma Betsy was born a slave, but she married a free black man, Grandpa Isaac. They had about 12 children. One daughter was named Harriet, another daughter was named Betsy, my 5 times great-grandmother. These 2 sisters, Frederick's mother and my 5 times great-grandmother, were raped by the same slave master, Aaron Anthony, whose grandson I met a couple years ago. As a result of that rape, February 1818, Anna Harriet gave birth to the greatest black leader to ever walk on American soil, Frederick Augustus Washington Bell. At the age of 20, he ran away from slavery and changed his name. Fred Bailey became Frederick Douglass. But my grandfather, Steve, was born the next year, 1819. If you ever read Frederick Douglass's autobiographies, he talks about grandpa. He talks about growing up with cousin Stephen. Well, Stephen is Stephen Henry Bell, my 4 times great grandfather. He wasn't as lucky. He couldn't get a chance to run away from slavery. He married a black woman, Grandma Caroline. November 14th, 1841, they had my 3 times great grandfather, George Washington Bell, their first black public school teacher, Talbot County, Maryland. He married Grandma Annie, who was the niece of Bishop Alexander Wayne, the 7th Bishop of Richard Island's AME Church. They had Grandma Caroline. She had Grandma Vivian. Grandma Vivian married a Spanish-speaking Cuban immigrant, Grandpa Cicero from Havana, Cuba. And they had my grandma Ida, who died 2 years ago. She married James Johnson, and they had Jamal Johnson, and he met and married Barbara in North Philly. And on the anniversary of the Nat Turner War, I was born. Brothers and sisters, we got to know where we come from. And what we cannot do is waste time arguing with self-hating Negroes who said they're not from Africa.
Come on.
I love that brother Shirt. He said, if you black, you African. We got Negroes in America, they not from Africa all of a sudden. Can't even tell you their great-grandfather's last name. But they know they're not from Africa. Don't know nothing about their ancestors. But they're going to tell you I was already here. That's a damn lie. Anthropologically, if you are black, you are from Africa. You could have got here before slavery. We're not going to argue that. We was already everywhere before slavery. But you ain't going to tell me you ain't come from Africa. But we're not going to waste time arguing with them. Because if they think they're going to get America back from the white man, let them keep on dreaming. So while they over here digging up old played out treaties from 400 years ago claiming to be Native Americans, we're going to be in Africa. Planting red, black, and green on the hilltops. Frederick Douglass said, if there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom and deprecate agitation are like men who want crops without flowing up the ground. They want rain but can't stand the thunder or the lightning. They want the ocean but they're scared of the awful roar of the waters. He said the struggle we have might be moral or it might be physical or it might be both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle. Frederick Douglass said, for 20 years I prayed on my knees to God for freedom, but the good Lord gave me no freedom till I got up off my knees and started praying with my feet. He said, a man may not get all that he pays for in this world, but you will pay for all that you get, and this must be paid for with blows or with blood or with both. But he who wants to be free must himself strike the first blow. He said, if you want respect from white people, why do you look for pity? The man who pities you will never respect you. And the man who respects you has no need for pity. The most honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, greatest Pan-Africanist of all time, said what? Without confidence in yourself, you are twice defeated in the race of life. With confidence, you have won even before you have started. Marcus Garvey said, if the black man and woman are not careful, you will drink in all the poison of Western civilization and you will die from the effects of it. Mr. Garvey was once asked, are you an African or are you a Jamaican? And he said, I would never give up a continent for an island.
Come on.
I'm an African. Black power.